Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude, Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's very special report, Structures on the Moon, with my friend, Chris Moroney. You can find him on YouTube on his Mars Anomalies channel. Chris, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jean. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to have you back on.
Yeah,
I think the
awesome.
last time you were on, I was on my second YouTube channel. So you know how time flies
Yes.
when you're called an egregious repeater, a
Yeah,
repeating
something like
offender.
that.
I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, just oddly enough, Chris, yesterday Hunter Biden was indicted. Of course, for a
hmm
lot of the information that was in the laptop that of course didn't exist 2 years ago. That's why I lost a YouTube channel. So I want to call
Yeah.
YouTube this morning. I was like, can I have my YouTube channel back?
It'd be nice.
Be nice, right? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today on the live interactive show. You guys on Rumble. I'm also simulcasting on YouTube and on Twitter today, guys. We're going to go through quite a few things here. Chris is up to, well, of course, his YouTube channel is called Mars Anomaly, but he does focus on the moon. And I've been paying attention over the last couple of weeks. He brought out a couple of videos here that I thought would be really, really cool to bring back into context here. As you guys know, I did this episode with Cliff High a couple of months ago in October. We got about 250,000 views on this. So a lot of interest on what's happening on the moon. We're having this conversation now about the Elohim and perhaps the return. So that's very interesting. And also, this latest episode here in the Deep Woo with Aliens on the Moon. This is from the Future Forecasting Group. I had Dick Algeier and company on the show. And they also talked about remote viewing structures on the moon, perhaps chemical reactions going on the moon, some type of industrial work. So if you haven't seen that episode, also the remote viewers did an amazing job there looking at the moon. And perhaps if you see in the top right corner there, what was looking back at them. That was one part of the remote viewing session from Dick Algeier. Fascinating episode there as well. So Chris, where do we start? Let me bring up this first video, this one here. So let me see if I can share that with the audience here. Hold on a sec. This one here. Okay, glass structures and much more. So this is your Apollo 14 clip here. You guys can find that on Mars Anomaly on YouTube. Chris, point to where we want to start here in this video. I'll let you lay down some track here as to why you were interested in this particular area, what you found, and perhaps also how that correlates to some of the things people were saying 20 years ago, like Hoagland about glass
Yes.
structures, and now suddenly that doesn't sound so crazy anymore. Let's start building some track here for the audience members. What are we looking at in this specific video, Chris?
Yeah, this kind of coincides with Hoagland, Richard Hoagland, where he claimed that there was glass structures on the moon, right? So this thing sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, clearly you can see these two blue dots in the sky. Now, what are they from? Now, I talk about, is it possible it's some kind of glare off the lens of the camera? Now, we can see Edgar Mitchell. He's the one that's got the camera. And I don't recall now if he has the regular Hasselblad and Alan Shepard has the TV camera. Either one of them, they both have cameras. Okay. So they're looking in that these things are pristine. And funny enough, I'll just add this real quick. I'm on two sites that have the same picture, and guess what? Those blue dots are gone. Okay. So once you enhance that, this whole thing lights right up. It's like there's something there that they either tried to like tone down the brightness of this area, because obviously it's going to be reflective, right? There's no other light source except for the sun or reflection from our home planet, meaning Earth. So it would not surprise me, if this is actual structure. And I strongly do, in my opinion, believe that there is a huge structure there. There's another light there. And there's one off to the right of that somewhere. I think it's really, really dim. But right there under them lights, once you enhance this, it becomes brighter. It almost looks like a glass structure or some kind of structure that they tried to really, like I said, tone it down so you can't see it. The only thing you can see is these blue lights. And to the left of that, there's something also there. And yeah, you brought this up where you can see the angle of the astronaut. You can see Mitchell. He's actually got this. It looks like it's just above the actual lunar surface. Now, wait a minute. What are you looking at in the sky? Now, one of my commenters said, how do you know he's not looking at the Earth? I think he would have added that because that would have been awesome to see in the photo, right?
Right.
Because you got the astronaut taking a picture of that, the moon, and whatever else. That would have made, Earth, and that would have made sense.
Would have made a great shot. Yeah.
It would have been a great shot. So then once you enhance that, and then you look at the these here that you're playing this part of this other video, they literally tried to hide like everything in this background. And this has been going on since, the moon and prior to it. Okay. This is other planets like Mercury when they went to and all this other stuff. And
Right.
there's stuff, there's straight edges, there's little pieces. And I always encourage people to take out like I've got a jeweler's eyepiece or some kind of magnifier, because sometimes if you zoom in too far, what does it do? It breaks apart.
Right.
And then we don't want that. We want it to be as clear, relatively, as possible. And there's stuff all over the ground. And guess where it's at? It's like right there at the front of this, what I believe is a structure, and many other people believe as well.
Really cool. Sophie Landrio says, "Hey, merci JC. So much to learn. Yeah, there's so much to learn on this subject, and I want to encourage you guys to look at it for yourself. Also, don't take our word for it. But it's
Absolutely.
interestingly enough here. Let me just pause this video here before we go too far. Just recently, again, here there was this testimony before Congress. Let me see if I can get back to that page here. Mr. Grush and other whistleblowers were talking about how." Yeah, the Pentagon files came out last year with the Tic Tac videos. They're talking way past the Tic Tac videos, also other craft in the sky that they just have no defense against. And so, really go listen to these congressional hearings. They'll give you a clue as to what's coming down the pike. And the question is, why? Why are they rushing now to talk about all of this stuff? Of course, people in our community have been talking about this forever, but we were tinfoil hatters. Now we're hearing this in front of Congress. But just if you scroll back, maybe what was it, 2 years ago? The former Israeli space chief was also out making the rounds here. He's retired now, saying that, yeah, there's extraterrestrials. We have bases on the moon, on Mars. He said there's such a thing as a galactic federation that has contracts and trade with humanity. So he really laid it all out. And this was a guy who had access to nuclear codes. So he wasn't a crazy person by any means, at least not at the time where he had the post. But at any rate, all of this seems to be coming out, Chris. And also in the last year, we've seen so many more countries now mad rushing for the moon.
Yep.
First of all, before we go back to your videos, your personal opinion, like, what are they rushing for? Is it something new that they found that everybody's rushing to see? Is it all of a sudden a requirement or a new technology that enables them to go maybe mine on the moon, regolith or lithium or anything else that perhaps we might need here? Or is there more political or maybe even war-related situations on the moon? What do you think?
Well, we know that the DoD, as well as the United States Air Force, is involved. Any of these missions, right? It's the moon, Mars, and anywhere else. Now, based on the photos that I've looked at and brought stuff out, this moon is littered with structures and spacecraft. And I don't mean thousands upon thousands of spacecraft, but there's many there that look dilapidated, like they're laying on their side, or there's one that looked like a almost like a shipping container you'd see on one of these ships they ship internationally, right?
Yeah.
So they're
There was
going
this
there.
other one too that kind of looked like a Muamua, that elongated one
Correct.
on the
Yes,
side too. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when you look at these, you go, okay, this is not natural. So therefore, what is it? It can only be something obviously unnatural. But I mean, when you look at it now, you have to ask the question, what is it? How long has it been there? And who put it there?
Mm-hmm.
And what was its purpose? So that's what we have to ask. So now you go, okay, and we can step back forward just for a little bit. I mean, step back. If you look back at, telescopes, they came out like early 1600s, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want everybody to imagine, yourself included, and everybody here in the chat, that we're part of NASA. Now, as telescopes are going along, they get better and better. They weren't used for astronomical use, I think, until 1700s, right? So now they get better, better, better. Focal points get better. Just everything about a telescope gets better. Suddenly, they look at the moon and they see something on there. And they go, "Wait a minute, that doesn't look natural. Why are we seeing like two rectangular pieces with maybe something circular?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here?" So now, what's the thing? What do? Everybody's in a think tank here, and they're going, "Listen, we need to get up there and figure out what this crap is, right? Let's find out what it is." So now, finally, just before Apollo 11, they had Apollo 10, which was basically it's like a test drive for Apollo 11. They want to see what the landing site's going to be, go around the moon a couple of times, and then basically it's just to see if they can do it. Yes, they can. So months later, I think it was like 3 months later, Apollo 11 happened in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
So now they go. This is what's funny. I love this because what they do is they go, we're going up there to get dust, rocks, and anything else. We can see anything that's crashed into the moon, we can get a better idea, as far as how old it is, so on and so forth. That was a PR move. Now, somebody mentioned something here in the chat about Kubrick. They're correct in some ways that he did actually make a recording.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this a minute. we're astronauts. We're going to go up there. We're taking the biggest step since mankind. First people on there, right? We're
Yeah.
going to the moon. Wait a minute. Why don't you pull out your 9-iron so we can hit a couple? Does that make sense to you at all? These guys are risking their lives to go to the moon.
Yeah.
They get up there. So that was the Kubrick part.
Right.
The other part is what really happened. They were on a recon mission.
Yeah.
And they were up there to actually get samples of materials that might have been from spacecraft, structures. There's plenty of structures on the moon. There's no doubt. You can see them. This is the reason why you see a lot of these photos. They're whitewashed, completely washed over.
Right.
And then you can see some photos are completely clean. Why? Because back in the day, all they could do is airbrush and do an overlay. Now they do a digital overlay. They used to airbrush stuff out. They used to do like a whitewash on them. They used to do all kinds of stuff. Now they digitally take objects out, which I've found those easily too, where they actually had areas where they actually manipulated and got the items out. Okay. So,
and that's easy to track with software today when you look at these images, if they've been manipulated or not. It's super easy to track.
Oh,
go ahead.
It's so easy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat is saying Jay Weidner has a bunch on that on Kubrick. I did a series with Jay Weidner on Kubrick, and part of that was the Apollo, and also had that connected to The Shining, how he was filming The Shining, but that was a decoy also for filming some of these moon landings. And just from a strategic point of view, this is not conspiracy theory. It would make sense that they would pre-film something in case their mission went bad, or in case their mission got into something sensitive. They wouldn't show that live to the audience members, right? So there would have to be some type of obfuscation mechanism.
Whatever, there's an accident. I mean,
exactly. That too.
I don't remember what mission it was, but do you remember they had Walter Cronkite on? Okay. And now this was live, and I don't know how, well, I do know how. I was going to say, I don't know how they had such a piss poor video feed, but we know how that goes. Right. Anyway, they were literally panning to the right. They're literally panning. Well, here's an astronaut standing there. Just to the left of them, there's this big white block. They suddenly started to go back. It's on YouTube. You can find it.
Yeah.
He literally, all of a sudden, he like, whoop, and he goes, it immediately starts to go back. Yeah. So we'll talk on. And they literally dropped the feed for like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So they literally are there for that reason. They are there for a reconnaissance mission.
Yeah.
To gather whatever they can. Again, we got the DOD involved as well as the U.S. Air Force. And this goes to this day. I mean, to Mars and everything else.
This is a military operation, or at least it was at the time. And some would suggest that even the space shuttle program, the one that we saw for the public, was just like that, a public show. And then there was another one perhaps being run parallel to that from the military. I always question this, and I want to ask you your opinion on this. When Obama canceled the space shuttle program, we were like, well, hold on a second. We still have the ISS up there, or so we're told. We still have crew up there. How are we going to go supply them with food? How do we do the staff rotations? Oh, we're going to rely on Russia. But hold on. In the mainstream news, don't they tell us Russia's the baddest enemy? So why are we going to rely on Russia? So clearly they have something else. We're just not told about it. So they've just gone away with the ruse and the lie of the NASA space shuttle program, the bubble gum for the brain TV there. But they have something else in the background. What do you think? You were talking to me about... just before the show, the SR-71 Blackbird, how they kept that a secret for a long time. Imagine the stuff they have today that we still know nothing about. Speak about that a little bit, Chris.
Well, my brother was in the Air Force for 11 years, almost 12 years, and he was an aircraft mechanic. So I'd be able to go on there at the time. This is in the 80s. I can go see the A-10 Warhog, F-16s, all that. Literally walk up there and touch them and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And he was telling me, he said, well, we do have secret aircraft. And he was telling me the SR-71 came out in the 50s and wasn't until mid-80s, I think, it became declassified.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is where it gets more bizarre and crazier. You first have to have that idea. Okay, now we have to blueprint it, put it together, test it, so on and so forth. This thing was probably made in the 40s.
Yeah.
Okay. And they had multiple. I think they had 3 or 4 of them. Okay. So this thing... And I asked him, I said, why is there so many darn fluids on the ground of these things? They got like oil leaks and hydraulic fluid leaks. He goes, let me tell you how that works. When it's on the tarmac, you'll have that. They'll fill it up before, meaning all the fluids they need to fill. And then once they get in the air, these faster jets, everything expands and seals it.
Yeah.
So there's no more leaks.
Right.
The leaks stop.
Yeah.
So I went, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, so it doesn't surprise me, and I've said this, we were just talking about this briefly, that during these missions, because would it go up to 17, People say that it was more. I believe there was. My personal opinion, if you go up there, let's say we're all astronauts here, we go up there, we have a look up there, and you go, oh my God, there's like structures, there's crafts and everything else. You're going to want to build a base there so you can literally take everything apart and just maybe go more places and find these things and literally tear them apart for
Right.
what?
Right.
Military use, maybe for the public at some point. It gets whittled down to us, whatever. I don't think they ever stop going. And here's the thing, we can use an SR-71 easily if you retrofit the engines. You're in a spacesuit. You can literally go there. Nobody's going to see you take off or come back because what? It's radar hidden. So we can easily do that with not a problem. I don't think they ever stopped.
No, I think you're right. I don't know if they're using the SR-71 Blackbird, but at any rate, they might be taking on and off from Antarctica. Nobody would see them there either.
Right.
And of course, these countries are all colluding to have these bases in Antarctica. Of course, mum's the secret. They can do what they want there, and this would never make its way to the public eye at any rate. Going back to what you just said about Apollo and these missions, this is 11 here on the screen. I've been watching this new series. I wanted to take your, I know you haven't watched it, but I wanted to bring it up for the audience members. It's called For All Mankind. Let me see if I can bring the poster up for you guys. But essentially, they're extrapolating the future of humanity as if the Apollo program continued. So just like you were saying, they eventually establish a base on Moon, then they go to Mars, and so forth. Fascinating series. And I've been watching this with my wife. I'm like, I think this is a documentary we're watching. They're actually telling us what happened behind the scenes, and I think it's absolutely fascinating to watch. Your take on that, and then we'll go back to some of these videos because, again, we're getting more and more capabilities to look up at the sky, to look at these pictures. We have softwares to enable better analysis. We have AI also that we can marshal to our expertise here on looking at all these stuff. And more, we're finding things here. And we're finding also the traces of the obfuscation. So clearly there's something. So the obfuscation could be just for military purposes, but it could go a lot deeper. So fascinating series. I don't know if you think about this, if you think that makes sense, if it's
absolutely.
A documentary, go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I don't think they ever stopped going to the moon. Now, if they had the technology to build the SR-71 back in, let's say, at least try to come up with the prints and everything in the 40s.
Yeah.
We'll press the envelope on everything. What was it, back in the 70s or 80s? They had the blue flame, break the sound barrier, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
We will push the limit like there's no tomorrow, and that's the whole point. So, they're saying, and there's no way to vet this, of course, but they're saying that we've been on Mars since the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this true? I can't vet it. However, there's something on Mars. That's a fact. There was definitely a civilization on Mars, and they're hiding this stuff in the photos. This is the question I get all the time, and I'm sure you've heard this yourself. One, why even show the public the photos? Two, why manipulate them? Well, two things. We're not the only ones to see these photos. Yeah. It's the people that work for these space agencies, right? Mm-hmm. We have these geologists, whatever else, these scientists, all working for NASA. They want to see these photos for themselves. And where are they getting their funds from? So you better produce something. If you want X amount of millions upon millions of dollars, you better produce. Mm-hmm. We want to see these photos. Not a problem. Yeah. No problem. Yeah. So what do? They manipulate them and give us garbage.
Yep.
But you can find what's in these photos, and that's the key. Once you break these photos down, you can see what's laying on the surface. I've done one with the, and I don't remember if it was the Apollo 11, what it was. You can see the moon buggy with the astronaut next to him. The other astronaut was taking a picture, just kind of like the one we just showed in Apollo 14 one there. And you can see what looks like these weird lines in the background behind him. Once you use a little bit of a burning tool and just bring it out, it brings these things out, pops them out, 3Ds them. Suddenly they're much bigger. It's not a flat surface. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you start seeing these objects. You go, well, this is what they're there for. Mm-hmm. And these things were good size. These are all lined up behind this astronaut. Mm-hmm. So are they there for simple little core samples, a little bit of dust, a little bit of rocks? No, that was, like I said, that was a PR move. That's what they told the public. And of course, I'm sure you've heard of that too, where they said that the rocks came back and they said they were false. They were like petrified wood, some of them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's not the reason
why
they
now
were there.
They lost all the moon samples. They can't find them anymore.
Well, I think they got a few. They're in a couple of museums, but I always found that amusing. But here's what's really weird. When the Apollo 11 crew, they were like, waving, hey, everybody, we're going to the moon, everything. They're waving, having a great time. Mm-hmm. When they come back, completely somber.
They look like the
And
saddest bunch of astronauts you've ever seen.
yes, and here's the funny part: when you see when they were literally interviewing them, right, at the press conference and everything else, and they go, "Hey, did you guys? So what did you guys think about the stars? How many stars did you see?" They're literally looking at each other, going, "Stars? Did you see any stars? I didn't see any stars." They're literally going back and forth, like, "Listen, they were not there for that."
Yeah.
And, they were, and these guys came back. They looked like they lost their parents in a car wreck.
Yeah.
They literally were like, like they just didn't want to be there. Yeah, they talked,
Yeah.
but they just didn't want to be there. And then what happened? Like Buzz, he became a recluse.
Yeah.
Most of these people didn't want nothing to do with it. You know why? If I went up there and I saw these structures, touched them for myself,
Yeah.
a spacecraft, I know it's not mine. It's not ours. It's been there for millions of years. I want to tell everybody I can. Nope, you have a gag order.
Right. Exactly.
And if you tell anybody, your family might have a terrible accident.
Right.
So
It could be that. And it could also be, I've always thought of that too, because he said some weird stuff in interviews after this over the last number of years, talking about what really happened on the moon and perhaps Phobos also around Mars. Speaking about that, let me just bring up one of your older videos. This I found was interesting, was this cool door on Mars. It's like clearly cut into the rock. Remember that one? I thought that was great. But yeah, like, were they sad because they couldn't tell the news about life maybe outside of Earth, or were they sad or somber because maybe they found something that was devastating to their worldview, that maybe we weren't under control of our own destiny as humans, and that was really why they were so somber too? We'll never know, or perhaps we will at some point, and perhaps this is where these series are going, like the For All Mankind series that's playing now. I think you guys can find that on Apple TV. Very quickly, before we go back to your two videos, or 2 minutes in here, we're doing well. Thank you everyone for joining us there in the live chat. We've got over 1,000 there on Rumble. Thank you guys. I wanted to bring your attention to this because you talked about the SR-71 Blackbird, but here in Canada, we had the Avro program. And this was interesting because also after World War II, we did recruit quite a few of those paperclip scientists from World War II and established this particular program. Now, this eventually was taken over for national security by the United States, and the whole program was crushed here in Canada. The molds were destroyed, and there's a lot of controversy about this particular story. Have you ever followed this, and do you tie that in also into the early days of the space program and how these scientists then went to the States and created maybe other projects there? Have you followed that at all?
I can honestly no, but I can say that a lot of these, and I'm not sure about, wasn't the Avro, didn't that come out years ago as well? This thing came out in like 70s and 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it, like I said, and you said this earlier, it's funny. What do you think we have now? Because they're always experimenting again, efficiency, how fast you can go, so on and so forth. What's the height, the whole 9 yards. So if you better the rocketry basically in a jet engine or, similar, then obviously you're going to get more efficient. It's going to be better and better. Of course, they were made for wartime. We know that. But just the idea of the secrecy and what they're capable of doing, even just a silly shape of a plane can hide it from radar.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, these guys, they ceased operations in 1963, but their claim to fame, I want to get this right, but I think they were the first, even before the Americans, to invent this technology of fly-by-wire. So as opposed to actually flying the stick and manipulating the elevators or whatever the flight control surfaces were, the computer was doing that for them with micro adjustments, right? So anyways, a fabulous story here for Canada, and it's a shame that we didn't get to continue it. But anyways, I digress. Let's go back to that video of the moon. Chris, let me go back to the structures here in the background. I'm just going to play this if you want to continue narrating here what we're looking at. And we're going to get into what you were saying here when we enhance the picture of what was below that blue light and what is perhaps refracting. Are we looking at a dome? Are we looking at another structure that is standalone? What do you think it is by your observation?
Well, it looks like these parts here in the background are like at the feet of this structure. Now, you can see where I actually brought up the brightness purposely, and you can actually see the astronaut disappeared. And then I was able to go around him, and there's other parts laying there that when you really look at it, it's just crazy. But I believe way in the background, it's part of these structures that stand up. It's kind of like, and I'm not going to say that's what this is, but it could be like your front yard. Like you got, stuff in front of it. Now, obviously, if it's some kind of, sophisticated structure or what have you, it has to be obviously technologically advanced or something along them lines, right? Couldn't tell you what it is,
Mhm.
obviously. Again, we can't vet any of it, but just like I said, when I enhanced that way in the back on the other photo, there's parts there, and again, you have to look at it with a magnifying glass or your jeweler's eyepiece, and you can see these parts laying there, and it's just bizarre. And you're going, okay, so it makes sense if there's something standing there in the background. Maybe it's part of, or it's separate, and it's just laying there in the picture. And these guys are not just looking at, hey, let's take a pretty view of this little dune over here. You know,
Could it be that what they're looking at on the ground are ruins or broken parts of whatever this glass structure is? And
very good
because of the
possibility.
angle, they're coming out in a different format?
Sure.
Yeah.
It could very well be because again, it's right in front of what these lights and these what looks like a structure, glass structure, or just a structure. Period. So to me, it could very well be connected to, or it's just laying on the ground near it. And of course, they didn't want you to see what's above the surface, so they blocked that out.
Right. What Let me ask you this. I'm going to see if I can make sense of this. In my video with Cliff High, let me see if I can bring this one back up here. This one here. We talked about how the moon right now to us, there's a reason to suggest that it's not appearing to us as a round sphere. Just the way the light is refracting and coming off of the edge, as if it was a clear flat plate, right? That's what we're seeing right now, where the light is going all the way to the edges,
Mhm.
suggesting there might be something in front of it, some type of technology, some type of mechanism that is preventing us from seeing some of the clarity on the moon. So, in some cases, this dome structure or this glass like structure could be part of that obfuscation. Now, what was interesting, you mentioned at the beginning of the show the invention of telescopes, and there's reports of clarity and what was presenting as a round sphere of the moon up until 1910, I believe, was the date we were looking at. And then suddenly we had this weird obfuscation, and it changed ever since. We've been now 100 years into this weird obfuscation of the moon. Do you think what you're looking at, the glass structures, could be part of that obfuscation? One. And two, when you look at a moon also and you look at these pictures, does it make sense the way the light is refracting all the way to the edges, as opposed to if we had an actual round ball, we would see light gather where the direction was coming from and would see that tailor off on the sides? What are your views on those 2 points?
Ah, that's a good question. That's really good. Yeah, like I said, I was following that particular uh, interview with him, and yeah, I in some ways I agree. I'm like 50-50 on it.
Okay.
Like, well, if the sun's bright enough, you're going to have that, and it's going to be like really crisp, so to say, and you're going to see that kind of cut off and everything else. So I believe that part's true. Is it possible that there's something maybe hiding and obstructing, kind of like how we can see things clearly? I'm not so sure. And the only reason why I say it is because anybody who's got a land-based telescope is obviously got to fight through what? Our atmosphere. So
Ours, and
it's
perhaps the
tough to
moon's
do that.
atmosphere too. We don't know what it is,
Right. It's
right?
within our atmosphere. So we know that
Yeah.
too. But
Yeah.
because it's closer to us and we have basically atmospheric, interruption, we'll call it, if you will.
Mhm.
But it's like, so we have to get through that. Now, if you look at the LROC photos, Lunar Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter camera, if you look at those photos, some of them are pristine. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And then you look at other ones, some that are a little older, or some of them that are almost that age, they completely whited out.
Mhm.
You go, okay. This is what I found out too. When you look at a lot of those crisp photos, you'd swear that moon is a complete ball. Now, I want you to imagine it's just a flat ball, nothing there. A ball, and it looked like somebody put this thing together, put all of the craters on top of it and everything else. Why do I say that? Because when you look at some of these things, you could look at one that's 100 feet in diameter.
Mhm.
Some of them are like almost a mile, if not longer, give or take.
Yeah.
And they're all the same depth. Wait a minute. That makes no sense, does it?
No.
Because a bigger crater would slam into this thing and make a deeper hole. Therefore, what? More debris on the outside. You'd have a deeper crater. Well, that's not the case.
And the
I've
other
got
thing
a
about the creators, just to continue to add to your point, also, um, the way the creators are presenting to us, they're spherical objects,
Mhm.
meaning that whatever hit it at an exact perpendicular degree. That's not
Mhm.
the case here on the planet. We have asteroid that hits us at an angle, and we have
Right.
these streaks, long streaks of craters here on the planet. We don't
Right.
see that on the moon. That also begs
Well, and
the
I've seen
question.
that too. I've seen one. There was one that somebody took a video of. This thing comes from the left side of the moon, literally bounces right off the other side of the moon. I was like, what? But here's what's crazy. When you see these, now we'll go back a little bit,
Yeah.
where some of these they claim is old lava craters. So in other words, you get lava bubbling up and then it just caves back in on itself. And that's why you don't see anything in the middle of these craters. It's completely smooth. But I have a hard time with that because I've seen many bigger or wider or smaller that were all the same depth.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. So it's almost like, they're putting stuff on this completely smooth sphere, making it look like it's real. Is it possible? And I know you guys talked about this. Is it possible that this is actually a fake moon? And if you watch the movie Moonfall,
Yeah.
which is a really good movie,
Yeah.
it's almost like every conspiracy that was about the moon, they just threw it right into that movie. Would you agree? It was crazy.
Yeah.
Except for that spin they had on where they had that other AI thing or whatever.
AI with
or whatever the hell. But really, really good movie, I thought.
Yeah.
Now, it wouldn't surprise me if this is fake because there was a time where they said the ancients, there was no moon. There was a time of that.
Yeah, and that's in recorded history. A lot of cave drawings talk about a time where there was no moon, and then suddenly it's been brought into orbit. How it's been brought in was a piece of Tiamat, another planet that exploded, maybe, and was captured. Maybe. But at any rate, it appears that it wasn't always there. And then there's a question of why it's in tide lock, why it's exactly proportionate to have these eclipses. Like no other place, at least in our solar system, have we found moons that act the way our moon actually acts. So it's kind of an anomaly, and it's unique in that way also, which again brings us to question what it is we're really looking at. Good movie, guys. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Let me go back to your video clip here, and then we have another video to watch, and I have a couple of pictures also that I want to share with the audience members. I've moved the cursor a little bit further here to look at the horizon, and you're painting something here. Explain that to the audience.
Well, see, that's what I was saying. In the back, there's actually what looks like, you'd see a little bit on the left is a little bit lighter area, and then of course the major one, the big one with the lights.
Yeah.
So it's not just one area that might be somehow it's just messing with the lens. There's multiple areas that are lighter, and it's like they just tried to cover that up any way that they could. But when you bring up the exposure in this photo, this thing seems to pop more and more. Of course, you don't want to really white it out because then you won't make heads or tails of it. Yeah. But there is something actually there. And all of these parts, that lunar edge right there is not the edge. That's not real. That's absolute garbage. If you look at it closely, the very edge of that where it goes into the darkness, that's not real. That's absolutely not real. So what they do is they drew a line saying, oh, there's space. And this is the moon. Now, there's something standing right there. And I've looked at this photo multiple times. In fact, like I said, I've got this same one I've got from LPI, which is a good site. Yeah. It's an institutional repository kind of thing. And those two lights are not in this photo, but yet that photo you have this was uploaded to Flickr, which is a lot of people have done this, including Ken Johnston, a good friend of mine. He has all of the legit ones and put them all up in here on Flickr. Now, there's a difference between the two. One's a little bit more poor on the detail because it's just not a really good photo, but the lights are gone, period. Why? They shouldn't be gone. They should be in every photo, but yet they're not there. So it goes to show you, I had a fight with, there was a guy that was on there. He was literally after Ken Johnston. He almost got him killed in India. Where he's saying, oh, he's a hoax, he's full of crap, this, that, and the other. Now, anybody, and I'll get into this briefly and then we'll move on, but he was the one who was supposed to take all the photos of the moon and throw them in the trash. There was like 4 of these books and of photos. Yeah. And he said, listen, we don't care what you do with them, just get rid of them. Because he said, why don't we bring a couple to the universities and, whatever, instead of throwing them out? I don't care what you do with them, they said. Yeah. So he took that as a loophole. Fine, I'm out. So he took them. He threw out 2. He's got 2. He brought one to a university and one he still has to this day. His photos show a lot less whiting out. Less, you can see where they try to really null the details on these photos, and they literally, it's great. I went and had an argument with this other guy where he's like, no, this is the real picture of it. And I said, well, why do I have this picture here? It's got some more details. And we went on and on and on. He finally gave up. As I told him, I said, why don't I have you on my show, and I'll have you on with Mr. Ken Johnston, and we'll have a conversation about this. Right. Oh, you're gonna sandbag me. You're gonna get me. You're gonna trap me. Nope. I'm gonna be completely fair with you. But anyway, these photos are easily being manipulated. There's like 4 generations of those moon photos, 4 of them. I believe he had the second.
Speaking of those that were supposed to be deleted, didn't John Lear get his hands on one of them? Because I thought I remember seeing an interview with him and Kerry Cassidy, and he was kind of explaining the same story, but I thought he had a picture of them or something else similar to that effect too, where clearly there was a lot of resolution compared to what we had been told in public view at the time. So I'm not sure if it's part of that same series of pictures.
Truthfully, I'm not sure, but I know he had his own, because he did his own, telescope work and everything else.
Yeah.
So he had his own stuff that was really good. I mean, super good stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, you can look at some of these photos, and I've done this. I've got it on a hard drive, external hard drive, because and I'm glad I did, because I had my good computer went down on me, and now I'm on a secondary computer that I had for backup.
Right.
But I had it all on my hard drive, and I can literally look at the photos now, and I also got the videos, and I go back to the photos, try to find them again on Google. Guess what? They're completely washed. Like they went back over them and said, listen, we know that the technology, people now sit behind their computers. They got Photoshop, any kind of enhancing software. We need to do something with these. Go back through them.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened. Because why is it that I can go from, like I said, Ken Johnston's, which he's got, like I said, I think they're second gen, 1 and 2nd gen photos, see the ones online now, they're completely trash.
Right.
There's something wrong. You know what I mean? They're hiding this crap. And that's this is the reason why I went after this stuff years before I even started making videos. I went after it like a pit bull, because there's so much stuff in here they're hiding from the public that people just don't have. They're just not aware of. They're really not.
Yeah, man, I love it. I think also John Lear had this. Somebody had given him some negatives, which had been untouched too. And when they expanded the negatives with today's technology, they got so much resolution. And again, showing that whatever they were showing us had been clearly messed with and around the corners and all that stuff. Really cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Too bad John's not around anymore. I wanted to interview him.
I hated to hear that.
I missed him. I was trying to set up an interview.
Yes.
Just before he died. Okay, let's go to the next video. This is something else that you brought on your Mars Anomaly YouTube channel. Structures on the moon hidden in plain sight. So this was published March 24 of 2023. I'm about 3 minutes in or so here. Set this up for the audience members. Chris, what are we looking at here?
Well, this is what I mean by, obfuscated, okay, or they just overlay something over it, because this is complete trash. Like I said, you can look at the LRO photos, the ones that like the lot new ones, the detail is pristine. You're not going to tell me the cameras that are on this LROC are garbage. It's kind of like people say, well, they had the Hasselblad. Those are complete trash. No, they're not. They're actually state of the art, and they still are to this day. Okay. So a lot of, now you can see that this whiteness and wash is gone. And look around that center crater right there. Yep. And look at those pieces laying there. Does that look like a crater to you? Any of those? There's literally, they look like they're on a platform, and they have these items on top of them. Some of them are, you can see that they are craters surrounding it. And then there's some things not so much. Clearly, a lot of that is not, a crater at all. And you can see on the top left corner right now, look how tall that crater supposedly is all of a sudden. That's not a crater. But if you wash it, what does it do? It looks like a 2D.
Right.
As soon as you get into the depth and bring back the darkness to it and bring it back and contrast it, suddenly everything has a 3D and pops right out. That's the whole idea, to hide these things so you're not aware of it. But you can see, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's like 12 pieces right off the bat I can spot, including that large wannabe crater in the upper left corner.
Right. Fascinating.
You can see the craters, and then you can see things that look like they're on platforms.
Right. Do you eventually think you want to get into your own telescope work? Now, here you're analyzing pictures and all that. Is that something that's coming up in the future for you?
Yeah, I know quite a bit about, telescopes to begin with. I just don't have one. I had a smaller one at one time. Yeah. Of course, you're not going to have the magnification you like. Even if you got a Barlow and a good camera, the whole 9 yards, you need something, pretty darn decent. The only problem I had with not doing that kind of work was that nobody else can get it for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, if you had like a really big telescope and I was telling you about, hey, Jean, you got to check this area out right now, get on there. Yeah. And you looked at it, you could see for yourself.
Right.
When I do my videos, I literally give them a link. A NASA.
Here's a source file. Yeah, here's a source file. Let's all look at it.
Here's a source file. Have at it. So now they can look at it for themselves and come up with their own conclusion. If you think it's BS, then by all means think it's BS. I don't tell anybody this is what it is. I say, I suggest this is what it appears to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think it is?
Yeah.
So this way here, they can say, you know what? I've actually enhanced this myself. It absolutely looks like what you're saying. Some
Yeah.
people say, Chris, I don't see that. I see this instead. By all means, it's to get you to watch and look at these things yourself, make people aware. Simple
Right.
as that.
Right. Emma says, Chris is really pleasant to listen to. I agree. That's why I have him back on. He says, thanks, JT, for bringing him on. Well,
Oh, thank you. I
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Chris, for being on the show. Let's just go back here. I'm going to pause this video here, but this item, what are we looking at here? And
Well,
if
this
you
is what
were
I'm
to
talking
if you
about.
were to put a ruler on that, how tall is
Right.
this structure?
Oh, truthfully, I don't know. But like I'll reiterate what I said was you can see what looks like a platform.
Yeah.
And these items sticking straight out of it.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't look like your typical, like you would see a crater.
Yeah.
You don't see that. It
Yeah.
looks like something platformed and these other items all sticking up.
All right.
These things could be 200-300 feet tall.
Yeah.
Of course, we wouldn't know. We'd have to look at directly what each crater is and be able to tell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then you can, how maybe how wide one is, like it's 40 feet wide or whatever,
Right.
and get a basic idea. That thing in the back, you can see half of the obfuscation they've done on that. Well, go back to the stock one.
Okay, hold on. Just going back here.
Okay, that one right smack dab in the middle, it's got a little bit of darker area, not that lighted area, the one below it, right there. Now zoom into that. Half of that is manipulated, half of it is not. You can see a line right there where they tried to go over that. Notice that whited area. Now look right underneath it. There looks like some kind of rectangular piece just underneath that white. It's in the shadow of it. Right there. You can see something right there. It's kind of shiny right underneath that. So they put something over that. And then what they did is they tried to make a line and kind of cover that up a little bit so you don't see what the whole thing is, right? Now, clearly we still don't know what it is, but regardless of that.
Yeah.
So, but now when you take away that whited layer, suddenly things start to come out.
Yeah.
You can see something right behind that. It looks like some round piece and some darker piece on top of it right there.
Yeah.
And there's other things. But this is what I'm saying. Whited out, no detail, 2D, nobody's none the wiser. But you can see all right in the bottom of this photo right now, you can just see all of that stuff laying right around what looks like a crater right there, but it's all around it. Yeah, that's not natural.
Yeah.
That's far from natural.
Are you open to the possibility that what we're looking at here are ancient and maybe current mining operations? Like we would have these quarries here on the planet? Is that what we're looking at?
It could very well be. And I think there was actually some kind of mining, but this is what's funny. If you go into this photo and you start looking at it, we were talking about this earlier. One, if it was been towed in like some people suggest, then where is it from? How do we know what visited or who visited this body we call our moon? How do we know, how long it's been, how long these things have been on there? I guarantee they're millions of years old, some of these things.
Yeah.
And we'd never know it. But again, if you're an astronaut and you go there for the first time and you touch this thing, I can't imagine. Listen, I probably would have browned myself. I literally would have had to change my drawers if I went up there and touched one of these things and go, this is not man.
Right.
Man did not make this.
Right.
That's crazy. It blows your mind just thinking this is not ours.
Yeah.
And now you're up there. So this is what I mean by, I don't think they stopped going.
Right.
I think that they're still doing it. I think they're checking these things out. And maybe this is where new technologies are coming from, right?
Well, at least, yeah. I'm with you on that. And also people are suggesting, the moon is such old because they tested the dirt rock and all that. Well, that's just a surface dirt rock. What if all that stuff is just stuff on top of another structure underneath that's more like the Death Star in Star Wars that could be even older? We don't know.
Exactly.
And then there's a question of whether or not it's hollow. There were reports that the astronaut dropped a lamp on it and it was resonating on the radar. So again, what is it we're looking at?
Okay, so let's backtrack just a second.
Yeah.
If you think about it, why would you bring a seismometer to the moon unless you had an inkling that it might be?
Right.
So I'm not going to bring a seismometer there just to go, hey, why don't we drop like a section of the moon on it, see if it rings out?
Yeah, because I have all this extra cargo space in the lamp anyways. Let's bring
what the hell?
Let's bring on the mom's microwave and VCR at the same time.
Bring a little TNT. We'll take care of it. So, this is what blows my mind. So you know that these guys, literally had an inkling of this. Now, there was two other, I don't remember their names. There was two Russian guys that actually did, really followed up, and they were scientists and everything else, and they believe it's hollow. And I do too. Now, is it possible, like NASA says, that there's just, lava caverns and that's all. Okay. But even with that, I can still build in it depending on the size that it is.
Right.
And as long as
Right.
it's secure and safe, I'm away from the radiation because now I'm shielded by earth or ground.
Right.
So I'm shielded now. I don't have to worry about the radiation.
Right. Well, let me ask you about the woo a little bit. This is a woo show. Before we get into some of the other pictures, I'm reading this book by Moro Biglino. It's called The Naked Bible, and very fascinating stuff. And he's going through basically ancient literatures and meanings and etymologies of the words that we use today in our religion to show that the translation has been incorrect or misinterpreted. And in many cases, he assumes that it's by design, right? So when he talks
Mhm.
about these angels, he talks about these gods, really they're replacing the word Elohim for God, and Elohim is those who came from heaven to earth, or the powerful ones, and it's plural, it's not the one God. So
Correct.
we might have some obfuscation here in our religion, in our traditions on earth, where we think we're setting our energy praying to specific entities, where in fact it's going in a very opposite direction. Now, having said that, in this book here, Penetration by Ingo Swann, he was one of the first remote viewers to report back on what he saw on the moon. And partly through the book, I'll see if I can find that tab.
Was that remote viewing?
Yeah, remote viewing,
Okay.
exactly.
That's what I thought.
The military stuff. And he explained that at some point he got to the moon, saw a structure, was looking through the structure in his remote viewing protocol, and something started looking back at him. This is also the experience of the latest remote viewers from the future forecasting group I had on the show a couple of weeks ago. So, is it possible the moon is a structure and that there's aliens on it, basically, or space aliens or other entities on it that are looking back at us, that are guiding humanity in some way? If you remember that movie with Jim Carrey, what was it called? The Truman Show.
Truman Show, yep.
Right? The producer of the Truman Show experience is on the moon. That's how he controls
Exactly.
life.
Yep.
Right? So it's kind of like in our movies. And of course, now we have this new series called For All Mankind, suggesting that the Apollo missions never ended. And again, maybe more documentary than anything else. Who knows? Do you leave room for entities, weird people maybe on the moon that has nothing to do with us? Right now, there's obfuscation, there's all this stuff.
Right.
Is it us going there and different militaries on the planet, and that's what we're picking up? Or is this maybe much, much, much older? What do you think?
I believe there may be a little of both. In other words, we have what's left on the moon, whatever landed there at one time, crashed into it, whatever, or was built on, like structures, like a bunch of structures. I've seen areas where there's loads of structures. So you go, okay, I like the idea of, when I see these things, I see all these structures. Okay. And then I see what look like spacecraft. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, we're up there. I strongly believe, this is in my opinion, that the military's been up there for God knows how long. Since them probably just before or just after the Apollo mission, they just continued it. They just continued on with it. And they're just analyzing what's going on. Again, another recon mission. And they're up there, just doing their thing. And who knows that they didn't, how do we know that the technology that's up there is completely junk? How do we know we're not using it? And then we said, well, nobody's left on this planet, because somebody actually suggested that it might have been a planet from somewhere else, and now it's just a dried up body, and it's just a moon. But how do we know that they said, well, this stuff is here, it's still functional, why don't we use it? Makes perfect sense, right? Just like on Mars, it's the same thing. They had structures there, and some of them are completely, decimated, and some are not. So I would use it if it was still functional. Simple as that. But yeah, I think we have what was left on there from millions of years ago, and I think we're there now. I believe there's more than one civilizations visited our moon, whether it was somewhere else or here, long before we were able to look at the moon ourselves. And I think this has been coming and going. And listen, here's the crazy part. Almost every body in our solar system has had life on it.
Right.
Because we are a binary sun, we have binary solar system. We have another sun that's burned out.
Right.
Way out there. So if you had two suns warming both ends of these planets, is it a possibility that all of these planets had life and they've just hopped in this, which is normal to go around to each planet and just visit? Pure speculation. However, is it a possibility? I think so.
And just to add to that too, is it possible that second sun you're talking about the one being burnt out, that is not the actual second sun, that we might have a second sun that's even further out in a longer elliptical orbit.
Right.
There's theories about that too. So
Well, we
again,
got 2 moons.
yeah.
A lot of people are not aware of that. We got a lot smaller moon that it's way out there, but it's around our orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got a second moon as well.
Okay, you're gonna blow everybody's mind. Okay, let's leave it at that for now. Let me go back to
that's a different show.
That's a whole different show. Yes, that's a different show, and then we can get into the was it the Dark Knight satellite? But anyway,
oh yeah,
also another show.
Gotta get some of that too.
I wanted to ask your opinion on this one. This was Cliff High too, posting this a little while back, suggesting that there's a continuing of growth or a real estate change on the Lunar crater. So if you see below, let me see if I can zoom that in for the audience. In 2018, okay, we see what appears to be a half a circle around this crater, something being built out here around the rim. And if we go now to 2022, we're at maybe 3/4 of the way through, suggesting there are changes there. And this, I believe, is what he was talking about in one of his Substack audio series, where somebody had reported to them that they were a contractor for one of these agencies doing excavation analysis of some of these pictures for future missions, and then they came back to their boss and they suggested, sir, there's something wrong here. The place we were looking at has changed in real estate, and apparently their bosses weren't that surprised about that revelation. So that's interesting, again, suggesting that this is current and ongoing. So this is where I kind of want to go with this here too.
Right.
When we look at Lunar crater and other things on the moon, have you seen anything also to suggest that in your research things are currently changing? So we see that there are perhaps traces of other objects that suggest maybe there was life or other visitations on the moon in the past, but is that happening currently now? And if so, is that us with an obfuscated space program type of activities, or is that perhaps another race? That's open for debate, but let's talk about these real estate changes. What do you see here when you look at Lunar crater?
Well, is it possible that that's an entranceway and that they're just building up around it? I don't know. Because why would you build on anything, a crater of all things? Why would you build on it? Unless you're either A, mining around it, there's something in that crater you want, or, or B, it's an entranceway to go in and out or whatever. So it makes perfect sense. But we all know, and I've showed you pictures of this, we'll get into this, where Lunar crater is. And then when you see, there was 2 things that happened, and we were touching on this earlier, both Jean and myself, where they had done a radar image of this area. Now, this is Sea of Serenity or Serentatis, depending on how you want to look at it, or it went either way. They can name it either one. That whole area from Arecibo, they transmitted radio signals, and they took basically an X-ray of that area. And then they received it over here at the Green Banks Telescope here in West Virginia. So I got a side-by-side, and you can bring that up if you want.
Want me to bring that up now? Okay, hold on.
Yeah. So we have a raw photo on the right and the one on the left. And when you, now keep in mind, folks, this was between 35 and 55 feet below the surface, okay? They claim that this is basically, old lava tubes and stuff like that. But as I was pointing out, when you get into that upper part of that, there looks like these round circles, and they're in a row. There's like 4 or 5 in a row in different areas of this. And I always tell people, again, make sure you use any kind of eyepiece or a magnifier. If you're on a smaller device, it's so much easier. And you can see these things. It just doesn't make sense. And just to the left of this area is Lunar crater. Okay. So is it possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can actually, right there. You got Lunar. It's in this whole area, folks. It's in this Sea of Serenity, this whole area. So, and on the very bottom right corner, and we'll say southeast of this, in this edge of this crater, this is where Apollo 17 took place. Okay, so is it any surprise that they're there? Just what did he do? Just take a dot and go, hey, let's just throw it at the board and see where we're going to land next. No, these guys knew exactly what they're doing. So you take an X-ray of this area and you can see it right here on the right. It's like, oh my God, that looks like a freaking city to me. In my opinion, that's a city. That is not lava tubes. Because if you were to take this photo and just go over it real carefully, you can see things lined up. You see what looks like squares and different shapes. This is not, again, natural. And I believe that those other bright spots you see in the center of that crater are the other craters. And then that may very well be in and out entrances to this underground. Again, pure speculation. But when you look at it, it's very bizarre. And this was actually on the site. The only thing I did was just enhance it, meaning make it darker, make the lines more prominent so we
Right.
can see this better. And I was blown away when I first saw this.
Do you think perhaps you're talking about these entranceways? Are they holes in perhaps a glass structure that we were looking at in the first video? Could it be that there's a dome atop this whole crater that is obfuscating our view of what's inside the crater? Perhaps a city, a
It
civilization?
could very well be because we were discussing this where I thought it's almost like now when we were saying this, vehicles, new vehicles, you can actually hit a switch and it'll literally tint your windows.
Right.
Is it possible they can adjust that? So it looks like ground, of course, the sand and whatever. Is it possible, they can make this a little bit more transparent, get sun in,
Mhm.
help the heat the underground.
Right.
Again, pure speculation.
Yeah.
But I believe that these are, and it may not just go into a dome so much, but it's just a tunnel into the underground, which could very well be an underground cavern, and this is what's under it.
Mhm.
It could very well be, and it makes perfect sense. If you're under something, let's say, remember like the movie Moonfall, it had this thick wall, and this is what rang out when they hit it with the third stage, I think it was, whatever it was. They hit this thing, it vibrates and echoes throughout this moon. Okay, so makes sense. If you're underground, one, radiation, two, the temperature is always consistent because
Mhm.
when you're in the sun, there's no atmosphere, and basically almost nil anyway.
Yeah.
When you have an atmosphere or lack of, then you're going to get broiled on the on the lunar surface. Now at night, it gets extremely cold. Well, if you're underground, just like here, it's like 50, 55 degrees. If you go like 6 to 20 feet in the ground,
Right.
regardless of the temperature outside, you'll stay consistent.
Right.
So the same thing applies with the moon. If you're under there, one, you don't have to worry about being hit by a rock from outer space.
Right.
No radiation, and like I said, you're protected and pretty much evened off with the temperatures and stuff. So there's so many things that this could, when I see Lunar crater, because we were talking about this, and I said, listen, I got the photo for this. This is perfect. It's in the same area as this, what I believe is to be a city underground.
Wow. Absolutely crazy. I love it. Can we look at this Walter Cronkite video? I have one. Let me see if it's the right one here. I want to go back to copy link address. Let me see if I can bring this on the slide deck for you guys and do it live. I kind of remember what you were talking about, the camera going, and then
Yep.
Let me see if this is the right video. This is an 8-minute clip. Do you recognize any of this here? Let me go a little bit further in.
Yeah, I know there were.
How
I'm trying to
far
remember
in?
if it was where the astronauts were walking around and they were panning to the right. And I believe it might have been either the lunar, maybe it's not that one there. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And they were literally panning to the right. They were on the ground. Now, he was older than this. Walter Cronkite was older than this.
Yeah, it's not this one. Okay, hold
And
on.
then and what he did was as soon as he was going to the right, you could see an astronaut, walking around doing something. I don't know if he was just changing, setting up the equipment or whatever, but all of a sudden you see this really large rectangular white block right next to him. And it's behind him and it's quite large. All of a sudden the Hartman just stopped panning away to the left. I went, whoa, check that out. It might be this one here.
Let's see. Let's see here.
I know it's definitely brighter. I wish I knew which one this was.
Maybe I'll have you on for the next show. We'll get into this. That's fascinating. Now, just your first take. If I don't find the video clip here, I'll stop it here. I don't want to get the people dizzy here as I scroll through that bar. What do you think that white square or item was? Is it a structure, or do you think about was another alien craft you were looking at? Well, your gut feeling when you saw it the first time. What do you think?
I would say it was part of a structure because it didn't have anything, you know what I mean, that looked like it would be a spacecraft. It looked like just a block, and you can see what it was like because the photo was kind of crappy, meaning it's very, very low detail.
Yeah.
The image was very low, but
Yeah.
when you look at it, you can see this block, and it looked like a smaller one on the side of it. And again, the astronaut was just about in front of that one. And like I said, as soon as they went over to it, of course, they heard him jerk the thing. The first thing you look on is at that rectangular block, and you're like, oh my God. And of course, they pan away, and you go, damn it. Because I believe there was something bigger behind it.
It's like, oh no, not for you. Not allowed
Yeah,
to see
wait,
that.
we were supposed to show that. Hold on, back
Oh
off.
shit!
So they
Somebody's gonna
swung
get
the
fired.
camera. Yeah, it's like somebody just lost their job. That's a fine for you.
I love
So,
it.
but regardless of that, I mean, they're hiding this stuff. They have been hiding it. They're going to continue. But the only reason why I believe that they're coming out with these UFOs now
Yeah.
from the Pentagon and everything else, think about it. Slow drip. It's been, and again, this was taboo to even talk about back in the day. Remember that? You're talking about UFOs are going, right,
Right.
UFOs,
Tinfoil hat.
tinfoil.
Sure.
And now it's coming to fruition
Yeah.
where people are now going, damn, these guys were right. What's the story here? So, but I also made a point. I said, if you notice back in the day,
Yeah.
when you see these old black and white photos, the UFOs looked old and clunky.
Mm-hmm.
As you get more and more progressive, they got more and more modern looking. So is it possible it's ours
Mm-hmm.
and it's not from out there? So I don't know. But
I mean, think of the SR-71 Blackbird.
yeah,
Like how cool that shit was in the 1940s and 50s.
oh, that was a bomb back then. Yeah, you're just like, what?
What the hell was that?
Oh, it's just crazy. And like I said, to this day, I went down there and I've actually touched this thing. I've been next to it and everything else.
Yeah.
Really wild looking craft.
Yeah.
The SR-71, and it's just really, really wild. And it's like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's like I said, they're pulling a wool over everybody's eyes, and they're hoping everybody's going to say, listen, whatever you do, right, go home, have your dinner, watch some reality shows, and just go to bed. We don't want you to think. We don't want critical thinkers.
Pay your taxes and trust the science, and don't ask any questions.
Yeah, be a good little human, and don't worry about what's going on behind this curtain over here. Just shh. So, and that's the crazy part. That's what's sad. And I got into this because I want to show the people this stuff between what's going on Mars and what's going on here on the moon. And, people are going, whoa. I had one guy said, man, I thought you were nuts at first. But then I started looking this thing in myself, and he was some kind of IT guy that was really proficient in Photoshop and everything else. And you can bring this stuff out. He knew better ways to do this, where you go into like the black plate, yellow plates, raw parts of sections of this photo. His name's Peter. He lives in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And he was I forget what he called his job was actually, but he said, listen, this is how you see what's really in these photos. So then when he brought that to my attention, you got to be kidding me. I never knew this was here. So as I started using these tools, wow, it became apparent. Again, we're looking at different layers of that photo.
Yeah.
And now you can actually bring it out more. And that's what's crazy. And that's why I just went, I'm taking off with this. I want to show the people what's really going on. And, I think it's interesting that we've been lied to so much and that we're none the wiser. You know what I mean?
Well, at this point, that's the whole thing. We know we've been lied to so much. And so a lot of things we think we take for granted today, it kind of behooves us to think, hold on a second, maybe we have to revisit all of these things. And I think that's hard. I think a lot of our audience members are like, JC, you keep taking away my sense of reality. The whole world is crumbling around us. Just 2 years ago, there was no such thing as a Hunter Biden laptop. And today there's an indictment since last night. So there you go. A lot of crazy stuff going on. Chris, we're already at the hour mark. Let me bring up your YouTube channel here, Mars Anomaly, again, for the audience members. Yeah. Is there anything else here of recent videos you want to point their attention to that maybe you think is worth their attention? And also, what are you working on next so that they can subscribe to your channel here and stay in tune with a lot of your work?
Well, we have a lot of balance of both what's the moon photos as well as Mars. And I have one of a series, which is that, or Ceres, depending on how you pronounce it, the dwarf planet. Now, that was found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Now, funny enough, when you look at it, you go, so out of all the rocks that have in this belt, you went after this one. And when you see this video coming, it's wild. Definitely something was on this little dwarf planet. But yeah, we try to do a balance of both and really rip these photos apart and see what's in them between, like I said, the Mars and the moon and other stuff too. That's why we're called Mars Anomalies and beyond. So we do other stuff as well.
I remember you're working on Antarctica also. Have you gone back and visited some of those pictures too? Or
I've got a couple I'm going to be doing. That's really, really interesting. A good friend of mine had passed on to me, and she actually, strangely enough and sadly enough, she passed on. But she and a friend of hers was working on a lot of this and had a lot of work done herself, paid these people to actually look. And they found out maybe about 100,000 years ago, there was industrialization in Antarctica. And I actually have a page for that as well. Just Antarctica photos and stuff like that, and her thesis. So
well, really, I believe you and I looked at some of her documents maybe last year, or it could have been on my first YouTube channel. So it's somewhere maybe on my Odyssey backup channel. That was a great episode too. We were looking at like a skyscraper of sorts, and there was like some huge buildings, outcroppings on the ledge of
Yes.
like a mountain. I remember having that
Yep.
conversation with you. That was
Yep.
amazing. Yeah.
Really, I mean, again, these things are being made to look like it's just a mountain, just crazy stuff like that. But it's no different than the moon photos. It almost looks like they use like a template. If they don't want you to see what's in the background, they just take this little mountain and plop it right over it. Because
Yeah.
if you look at most of these things, they're like really good detail.
Mhm.
And then you look at the mountain, you could just tell it's false. It just doesn't look right. Well, it's the same thing they're doing to the Mars photos and anything else they're trying to hide, whether it be on like asteroid Bennu, in different places. They're doing this to hide what's really there. And again, if we go back to the moon and just say, okay, we found this on the moon. You're the first one to find something. Okay, it's clearly not ours. What are you going to do? You're just going to, we'll just stop there. No, you're going to go, okay, if it wasn't ours, did they visit anywhere else in our solar system at all? Let's start checking out closer planets, Mars and anything else.
Right.
And so they started finding out there's more and more in our solar system that it's probably been inhabited millions of years ago. And that's what they're finding out.
Yeah.
It's just crazy stuff, man. It's just, when you start looking really into this stuff and really diving into it and going to, real photos and stuff like that, that's what you want. You want to see,
Yeah.
And then it's like a giant puzzle, I always call it. Then put it all together and you go, wow, on a grander stage, wow, we have been fooled in a big way. So, yeah.
The grand deception.
Pretty much in a nutshell, yeah. Absolutely.
Speaking of deception, guys, join me tomorrow, December 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm doing the special broadcast show with my friend Janine here on Angels and the Great Deception. We're going to be looking at some of the work from Mauro Biglino, the Naked Bible, as well as some of the comments that we received after our last show on Thursday, the viewer questions show on pay-per-view. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get into some more of that deception tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be on Rumble only. So if you guys want to mark your calendars for that, and if you're not sure to find it, just go to beyondmystic.net /schedule. You'll find the links to that episode there as well. Thank you so much, Chris. Wow, what a great show, man. The hour goes by really fast.
Oh, really quick. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, you're very welcome. And folks, please, I do recommend you go check out Mars Anomalies and Beyond here on YouTube. And this was the Structures on Mars, a special edition with Chris Moroney. I'm Jean-Claude Mystic. I love you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.